7 years ago,
Yes, something like
8 years ago, like
Yeah.
right out of school.
What is it now? 2024? Yeah, it was like 2016, 2017.
Yeah,
Yeah, nuts.
insane. Well, screenagers, that voice that you're hearing, that is, I'm happy to welcome to the show an old friend, dude I went to college with. We've written together, we studied together. Brought to my attention right before the mics came on that we did a presentation on buddy cop films together.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, Gus Prum, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Canon. How's it
Yeah, thanks
going?
for having me on, man. It's great to be here. Great to talk some film with you, and excited to get down to the nitty gritty.
Hell yeah. So as you can all tell, listeners, by the title of this episode, we're going to be talking about Goodfellas. Very excited to talk about this movie in particular. This is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a really important movie to me personally. Gus, I don't know if you feel the same way about it or if you just think
Definitely.
it kicks ass, but
Yeah.
I feel like for people of our age who sort of grew up in the tri-state area, this
Hmm.
movie holds like a very special place in our hearts.
Yeah.
So we'll obviously get into why this movie is so special to both of us, why it deserves its place in the canon. But before we get into all that, Gus, I feel like it's been a minute, so we do have a bit of catching up to do.
Hmm.
I know that you have been working on some film adjacent stuff or film related stuff. You're working really within the industry right now, which is very dope. We always love when or I always love when I have guests on who actually have like real world film making experience. So why don't you tell me and our listeners a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing lately?
Yeah. So I work in nature documentary. Work for a small or a I don't want to say small, but a
Yeah,
smallish sized
yeah,
documentary company. We do nature documentaries, so stuff that you'll see on like PBS, Nature, that kind of thing. Your mom probably loves it.
yeah.
And we're working on this one on insects right now. So 4-part series on the bugs that rule the world. It was
Hell
sort of
yeah.
brought on by like insect declines. I don't know if you guys read sort of nature related stories. Insect numbers are down, so we are sort of delving into that story. We've done a couple ones on hummingbirds, ducks. Go check those out on PBS Nature if you are interested in those. And they're very sciencey, so they're not like
Hmm.
one animal eating the other and
Yeah.
dramatizing it and like giving them names, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
They're very like stripped down, very down to earth sort of nature documentary. You guys will enjoy them if you check them out. I work sort of on like production side, so like research, development, that kind of thing. So I spend a lot of my days reading scientific articles about various animals, and it's cool.
Damn.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's very dope work.
yeah, it's
How
fun.
how did you get into that? How did you get into the world of nature documentaries?
So it's kind of the family business. So my dad is a biologist, and my mom has been running this company for a really long time. And just sort of grew up around it, honestly. And if I tried to like skip school one day, my mom would like, all right, so you're carrying my tripod for me, that kind of thing. So it's like, all right, I guess that's cool too. So um, yeah, just working for my mom has always been basically, I didn't realize that I was doing it until suddenly I was getting paid for it out of college. Did some
Hmm.
other things, we worked, like you were up for that blog that I was editing for. Went to grad school, taught high school for a little bit, and then sort of just realized like I really care about film. It's what I really want to be doing. So yeah, so I'm back in the industry now for a couple of years and loving it. And I don't see myself necessarily as like a quote unquote nature person, but I guess after all these
Hmm.
years doing it, I kind of am. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely like I said, the family biz.
Yeah. Do you ever find it like I feel like that would be super soothing to just be out in different natural environments, like
For sure.
capturing images of ducks or bugs or whatever it may be. Like that
Yeah,
seems super soothing.
it is very soothing. Sometimes it can be very frustrating because, like, you don't have an actor there where you can talk to and be
Yeah,
like, all right, hit this line right here, or like
yeah,
stand right here, or adjust the light here. So you're really at nature's, like, I don't know the right word, but you're just depending on nature to just do what you want it to, and so it's a lot of
hmm
waiting around. It's a lot of just
yeah,
sitting there, and it's a lot of looking up at the clouds and being like, ah, shit, we don't have the right light. But when you get that right shot, it's very rewarding, as it is, in a studio setting as well. But it's
yeah,
it's different, relying on the birds and the bees as opposed to, like, actors and actresses. There are talent. It's a
yeah,
very different talent than they deal with in Hollywood.
yeah. I'm sure the ducks can be just as stubborn as like
Oh, absolutely.
the top A
Total
list name. Yeah.
total divas. Total divas.
And you were saying, so right now you're doing like pre-production. That's a
Mhm.
tough two words for me to say.
Yes.
Like research and stuff, but you are maybe looking to do some more like on camera work, some like
Yeah.
DP work.
Yeah, so, like, I've always been surrounded by like cameras and stuff like that, and the whole setup. But to really trying to get more hands on, like having more skills on set is always a
Hmm
good thing in the film world. Like, whether it's sound or I've recorded sound on shoots. I've done a little bit of shooting, so I think, like, if for anyone trying to get into film or like working on film, like
hmm
just getting those skills up, you know, being like a Swiss Army knife on set is like a super great way to sort of
Yeah.
to make a living, and having real skills that can be applicable to, like, the set is super useful for sure.
For sure. So, do you think do you think nature documentaries, do you think that's sort of where you're going to end up, where you're looking to end up? Or are you looking to branch out into sort of other kinds of
Yeah.
filmmaking, maybe like more narrative stuff? Or do you think that you're set here?
I think, like, ideally I would be doing sort of features, not necessarily nature documentaries. I would love to, make my own features, like little indie features.
Hmm
There's this director, Hal Hartley, that I really love, and I think his films are a great reference for, like, American independent film, and really just trying to get some of my skills up to the point where I feel confident enough to, like, kind of make my own stuff. But yeah, I would love to eventually get there. I still feel like I'm building up the skills and sort of building up the confidence to do that. But
Yeah,
yeah, would absolutely love to do that.
for sure. Well,
Yeah,
you know, I'm sure I'm sure it's in your future. Obviously looking forward
appreciate
to
that.
whatever it is that might come, in the next couple of years on that front. I was just sort of thinking you could like mix the two and be like a Terrence Malick type where it's
Absolutely,
like
true to
half
life.
nature documentary, half half narrative film, and just piss
Yes,
off like everyone on on both
absolutely.
sides. Yeah.
Yeah, Attenborough/Scorsese.
Yeah. Amazing. That's the real dream. When we can put
Absolutely.
those two things together, it's legendary.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. That's it. Like I said, it's always fun for me when I'm able to get someone on who actually works within the industry and like knows how hard it is to pull off these feats
Yeah.
that people are doing within these movies that we're talking about. Someone might see Goodfellas and think, it's not that good, whatever. But if you've worked behind a camera, if you've done pre-production, if you've done sound mixing or like anything like that, like that for all of these things to come together and work in the ways that it does work in a movie like Goodfellas, like you have another level of insight that the rest of us just like don't approach movies with. So I am really interested to get your thoughts on this movie in particular, just sort of like with that frame of reference that you're bringing to things.
Definitely. Definitely.
So I feel like this is a good point for us to sort of jump in to the movie itself. Um,
Let's
like I
do
said
it.
on the front end, we are both of a certain age where
Mm-hmm.
younger millennials will say both grew up within the New York City tri-state area.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Westchester, you grew up in Connecticut, so we both have like a certain familiarity with stories like Goodfellas. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that all Italian Americans are like this, but like the just like the Italian American influence in
Yes.
the Northeast is like different than anywhere else where people can grow up in the
Mm-hmm.
States. And I feel like because of that, like, I'm not Italian. You Italian
No,
at all?
no,
So
not
like
at all.
I have not one drop of Italian blood in me, but like I identify with this movie so hard
Absolutely.
because the Italian American influence in where we grew up is so deep
Mm-hmm.
that it was just like hard to get away with, or hard to get away from, I should say. For me, and I'm going to stop rambling and send it back over to you. For
Yeah.
me, like my first experience with this movie was just with the movie poster,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Yes.
was very one. It's like one of the best movie posters of all time, but it had a
100%.
very prominent place within the pizza shop that I would go to all the time as a kid with my family. And every time I would see it, I would look at it and think, wow, that looks like the coolest movie ever. I can't wait until I'm old enough to actually watch it. So
Yes.
this is really just a roundabout way of me asking, when was your first time watching this movie? Like, what sort of, like, is there like a deeper connection that you feel because of everything that I just laid out?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's your overall relationship to like the world of Goodfellas?
Yeah, it's so true about the poster. I feel like one of my friend's older brothers had it in his room,
Yeah.
and I think besides the Pulp Fiction poster with like Uma
Yeah.
Thurman on it, it's like one of those iconic '90s film posters that you like really remember. But I remember there was a restaurant in New Haven called Goodfellas, and it had the exact same like font. And I remember my parents always making a joke like it was like some mob place. I don't know what that meant when I was like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I think I saw it for the first time probably like in high school, and with the boys, and I was like, oh, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen. Like I
Yeah.
don't think I had ever. I think I had seen a couple episodes of The Sopranos. I think I had seen some like mob-ish movies, but it was the first thing where I realized like this is like a whole genre within itself. Like Goodfellas in and of
Hmm.
itself is a genre. Like the
Yeah.
movie is a genre. And I just remember like making just for the next, 3 or 4 months, just making like doing Joe Pesci's voice in it with my friend. Like it's just one of the most quotable, one of the most memorable movies,
Yeah.
especially as like a teen boy, like you said, in the tri-state. Like just such a it was a moment to see
Yeah.
Goodfellas for the first time. And yeah, I think like seeing yeah, like as a young boy in that sort of like milieu is like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. And the funniest part is like you're totally missing the point when you
Yeah.
think that. And only since I've seen it a couple of like, as I'm older, more mature, it's like, oh my God, like these guys are terrible, like you're
Yeah.
like, like this is not what am I supposed to like take away from this movie. So yeah, like I think immediately upon seeing it, you're like, wow, this it meant something pretty much
Yeah.
immediately.
I I think this movie operates within that sort of classic like film bro
Mm-hmm.
sort of space where you watch it when you're a 14 to 16-year-old guy for the
Mm-hmm.
first time, and like you're saying, you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then it's only as you get a little bit older and watch it through a different, more mature perspective that you realize, oh, like these are not guys who I should be idolizing at all. Everything that they were doing was terrible, and at the end it all catches up to them. Like none
Yeah.
of them get away with it. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's like the prototype like film bro movie.
Truly.
And I think you can appreciate it for like on a really like surface level way where you're just like, wow, this is super quotable and the characters are really funny and engaging and all of that stuff. but you can also engage with it on a deeper level where you're thinking about it in, you know, thematic, on a thematic level, or like philosophical level, or an artistic level. um Technically, this movie is one of the most impressive things that you'll ever see. So
Hmm.
it will be exciting to, like, throughout the course of this conversation, for us to sort of like go back and forth between those two things.
Yes. Yes. The funniest thing is that like when I watched it again, I had completely forgotten about the last like 10 minutes. Like it's almost like as if I had blocked them out as a,
Yeah.
15-year-old. Like no, he goes he goes in the witness protection program and rats on all his friends. Like it's like he completely turns his back on everything. And it's just like, oh yeah, I missed all that, I guess. Like
Yeah.
it's just a funny part about like sort of how that like machismo really appeals to you when you're 15, and then you realize like, oh yeah, like you said, like these are the bad guys kind of.
Yeah. And I think so. This is the first Scorsese movie that I've done an episode about
Mm,
on this podcast, but that's like an obvious through line throughout the course of his career,
yes.
is sort of this temptation into these underworlds, and like the immediate satisfaction that you get out of being a bad person. And
Hmm.
then, but the movie is really about how bad that temptation is and how we should not give into it. And it's only in his later movies where it becomes so apparent, because
Hmm.
in so many of his earlier movies, the point is like totally missed.
Yeah.
And I feel like Goodfellas is just the prime example of that. So I guess in terms of diving a little bit deeper into the movie itself, I don't even know where to start. Have you ever read the book? Have you read Wise
No.
Guys?
No, never did.
So I picked it up once in an airport when I
Hmm.
was like 22
Yeah.
or something. Just, hey, this is what Goodfellas is based on. I love Goodfellas. I should give this a read. It's amazing. And if you read it, it gives you like a whole new like level of understanding of what's going on in the movie. So we'll just say worthwhile picking up. Um,
Cool.
but so I guess with that, what do you, let's start like structurally in terms
Yeah.
of how the movie is constructed. What do you make of like the voiceover in the beginning, the like with all the freeze frames and all that stuff, and then sort of like how it leads into the rest of the story?
Yeah, it's crazy how much like I rewatched it again recently on an airplane actually, and which is not the ideal
Yeah.
setting for this movie. But I was like, all right, let me rewatch Goodfellas for the 15th time, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how much like time he compresses into this movie, because you start with Ray Liotta's character when he's like what 10, 11, and then
Yeah.
we go like 30, 35 years, 25 years, something like that. And I can't imagine another way of doing it, but I think Scorsese feels like the main character in this movie more than any of his other movies. Like
Hmm.
I like he is like you're paying attention to the camera moves and the freeze frame, like you said, and like the voiceover. Even though it's Ray Liotta, it's like a complete masterpiece in film making, like making a film. And I think it's really cool the way he sets everything up, and he is just like as they say, he's in his bag like completely in this film, Scorsese. And I don't see another way where you can make sort of like a lot like 35 years 30 years of someone's life without this sort of like the narration. And what is it like the line where he's like, ever since I was a kid I wanted to be a gangster, and like
Yeah.
the cut to his face, and then like
Yeah.
the credits. Like, come on, that's the
Yeah.
coolest opening to a movie of all time. Like, it's just, of course when we were 15 we thought it was the coolest thing ever,
Yeah.
because it
Like, wow,
is.
now I kind of want to be a gangster
Yeah,
too. Like,
exactly. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a gangster then, mom.
yeah.
Like, and
I'm thinking like as a black Hispanic kid, you know, how do I become part of the Italian mob as
yeah,
a
I was like,
15-year-old?
I'm not Italian at all, mom. Like,
Yeah, are you sure?
are you sure? But yeah, no, I think like that opening. And then it's pretty quiet for a little bit, right? Like it opens
Hmm.
so hot and you're like, all right, I'm in. And then, I think those scenes as with him as a little kid, it's kind of like, all right, it's almost like let's get through, like let's set the stage a little bit,
Yeah.
because those aren't particularly like, not they're not interesting. It's just like compared to the rest of the film, it's kind of like, all right, where are we going? Let's get into it a little
Yeah.
bit. But the crazy thing about Scorsese, and this is true about like a lot of his films, is that like they don't feel like they're long, but they don't feel long. They're not like, they don't drag. And The Irishman, that was pretty long. But
Yeah.
with Goodfellas or like Killers of the Flower Moon, Casino, like stuff like Departed, there's so like there's so many hits, and it's just there's no
Yeah.
empty space, that it's just like it's just exciting. Its energy is so high.
Okay. First, like, I got to go back to the plane thing because there was a period of time where whenever I was on a flight, I would just watch Goodfellas with the sound off and the captions on because I had seen it so many times that I just like knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to waste my time with watching a new movie. So that's hilarious that you rewatched it on a plane.
Yes.
But I also think the point that you made about how he compresses 35 years into like
Yeah.
2.5 hours in in a way that never feels like rushed or like it jumps around awkwardly. Like you're the the pace is it's very quick. It's like kinetic enough to keep you engaged, but
Hmm.
it never feels like something is super rushed or a jump is made before it's earned or anything like that, which like you're saying, like that's like really hard to do
It's crazy.
to balance both of those things, to make a long movie that is also paced quickly enough to not lose you as an audience member, but also never feels like it's jumping the gun on, an important time period or like squeezing something that should, be allowed more time to breathe, like squeezing it into like a 2-minute scene.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
Yeah.
insane. The other
No,
thing that
it's
you mentioned,
crazy.
his direction,
Hmm.
the camera work in this movie is like absolutely it's absolutely bonkers.
It's insane.
Are there like any favorite shots or cuts that
I,
you
I
have
would
in this movie?
say I would say I remember vividly the scene where, like, the opening scene, but then we meet up with it later, right?
Hmm.
When they kill Paul Servino, is that his name? The Frankie Batts, I believe, is his name. He's
Billy
the guy.
Bats.
Billy Batts, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, and
Go
when they
home and
open
get
the
your
trunk,
fucking shine box.
yeah, right. And they open the trunk, and there's that like red light emanating
Hmm.
from the trunk.
Yeah.
I think it's like basically the brake lights or whatever, but whatever that is, like so haunting. It's like, all right, like it's in Ray Liotta's like draped in that red light. It's so good.
Hmm.
That, and then there's obviously the Copacabana shot with the one like take through when he's walking
Yeah.
her through the Copacabana, and he's like dapping everybody up, giving them money. I mean,
Yeah.
incredible. Um, then there's the shot where Robert De Niro's character is telling Lorraine Bracco's character to, like, he's basically trying to kill her, like when
Yeah.
she's on the sidewalk, and he's like, go down there, go down
Yeah.
there, and she's like, nah, I don't think so, and then she like eventually decides not to and goes into her car and speeds off. And then
Hmm.
there's obviously the helicopter scene when he's driving around and the helicopter's above him,
Yeah.
and he's just looking so strung out. um so I would say those like four are, and then I guess in the bar, well, yeah, when Robert De Niro, it's like De Niro, Pesci, Liotta, and Billy Batts in the bar, and
Hmm.
he just keeps talking shit. He won't shut
Yeah.
up, and yeah, and now more shots are like coming back to me, but yeah, I would say like it's it's such a memorable film because like there's just such like this, like you said, like kinetic energy like
Hmm.
flowing through it, and it's not like anyone is not, no one's giving like the performance of their life, actually, besides Lorraine Bracco. I think she is incredible in this movie.
Yeah.
But Ray Liotta's great character actor. De Niro's doing his thing, Pesci's doing his thing, but it's just like this energy within the film. It never feels like it's static,
Yeah,
and that is just such like an enjoyable feeling when you're watching a film, that it just like draws you right into it.
it's so cool. The Copa scene is one of the most insane
All
one
time.
take shots of all
Yeah.
time. And there's this like weird, lame trend in Hollywood right now with all of these forced one takes.
Hmm.
And you look at something like the Copa one take, and it's not just degree of difficulty that makes it so cool. It's also a really pivotal moment within the narrative and within like Lorraine Bracco's character, really like in her character development. Like we're really getting some insight into where she is at that moment. And yeah, I just think like, not to bash like current movies, but a lot of that like narrative intention is lost when we
Yes.
do one takes nowadays, as opposed to something like that Copa scene. Um, and then you mentioned the red light at the beginning. And I noticed this on my rewatch, but there's a lot of red in this movie.
Yeah.
Is there? Do you think there's anything to that? I'm too dumb to know if there is, but I
I
just
mean,
noticed like red.
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like I get like the easiest would just be like blood.
Yeah,
I but I don't know. Like maybe there's some sort of. I'm sure there's some sort of like. I think violence and like Catholicism are Scorsese's always. Those are his like two things that he's always hitting.
yeah,
And so there's something, deeply sort of like Roman Catholic in red, maybe, or something like that. I don't know, but it's good. I do feel you. There is always some sort of like red hue in this movie.
yeah,
But yeah, no, I think what you said about like contemporary movies with the one take, it's so true. Like comparing Scorsese, even though he's like, if you're a film lover or a filmmaker and you watch this movie, you'd be like, oh my god, he's showing off. But it's
yeah,
not it's not pointless showing off. It's because, like you said, like this narrative, it's important to show. Like he can go right in and he daps everybody up, and then he's at his seat, and they're pulling up another table for him and putting him front and center. Like there's a reason for that. It's not just like check this, check what I can do out. It's like it's
yeah.
real and it matters. Unlike, like you said, like unlike some contemporary film that just feels like they're just doing it for shits and giggles or whatever.
We're just doing it to do it.
Right.
So, all right. So you mentioned some of the actors, and
Hmm.
this cast is like absolutely stacked.
Stacked.
Like you said, Ray Liotta, who was like not a big name at
Mm-mm.
all when he got this.
Kind
Um,
of a crazy move to just cast Ray
yeah,
Liotta as the main character here. Like,
wild. And then to flank him with Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro, who had like both had like at least a decade of proving that they could make top tier stuff with
yes,
Martin Scorsese, and like just have Ray Liotta like be thrown into the mix and like have him pull it off, like pretty wild, pretty ballsy.
wild. And like De Niro and Pesci, this is like literally. I mean, yeah, Raging Bull comes out in 1980. Goodfellas comes out in 1990. So yeah, so you're dealing with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci after Raging Bull, which is like the movie of the 80s.
Hmm.
Like critics and audiences, one of the greatest movies ever made. And you're throwing Ray Liotta, who's basically like kind of like a soap opera actor. Like I don't like at this point in his
Yeah,
career, like a
yeah,
character actor, and then Lorraine Bracco, who's like an amazing actress. And yeah, so it's like I would not. I don't know how he handled it. He did a fantastic job. I mean, it's like an iconic performance. Absolutely, he's an incredible actor. But yeah, to throw Ray Liotta in there, and also I think like it's an interesting move because it gives, because he's like supposed to be like the young guy, right? He's the young up and
hmm,
coming sort of like the new guy on the block, and it works in a sense because like
yeah,
we see De Niro and Pesci together, and they feel there's just such like a confidence about them, and there's just such like an authority about them, and then here comes Ray Liotta, and it works for the film because like if you threw De Niro into Liotta's character, then suddenly it's a completely different movie. Like if someone else is playing, Henry, it's a completely different movie. I think it's
Yeah,
a very interesting choice.
it's kind of interesting because he's supposed to be like a small guy within this world.
Hmm.
And usually with, well, not usually, but like sort of up to this point, the gold standard for mafia movies was The Godfather,
Yeah.
which is this like sweeping epic about a super powerful family and, all the ins and outs of like their politics and stuff as being like a crime family that runs the city. Whereas Goodfellas is just about like the day to day of the street level guys in the
Hmm.
mob. It's just
Hmm.
like Ray Liotta going about his business. I rob a couple people here. I might whack a guy over here. I'm just trying to make money, as soon as I run out of the little money that I had before, because this is what we do. So, yeah, to what you're saying, if you have someone else in that role, it feels like they would be too big for it. Like
Yeah.
De Niro would be way too big for that role. If you have him as the main guy, then he's got to be like this imposing figure because it's Robert De Niro.
He's got to be the boss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny you say that though, because it's like comparing it to The Godfather or like Scarface or the earlier Scarface.
mhm.
It's like they just live in the suburbs in Long Island. Like they have
Yeah,
these like like little not little. They're very nice houses, but they're
yeah,
super tacky inside.
yeah.
And when Lorraine Bracco goes to the like she's hanging out with all the wives and they have all like the makeup and the bad hair and the bad outfits. It's like very like watching it again as an as an older person. It's like Jesus, this is not glamorous at all. Like this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like and so it's funny that you say that because it does feel like yeah they're almost like your neighborhood gangsters. It's not
Yeah.
like it's not like the huge mob. It's like kind of just guys pulling off robberies, and they happen to hit the biggest robbery of all time.
Yeah. It's not this American dream sort of
Right.
gangster epic the way that Godfather and Scarface are. It's just, yeah, this guy is a gangster and this is what he does.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
if we had a reality TV show about
Yeah, exactly.
dudes in the mob and just like they were like, all right, this is what we're gonna do today. Like
Uh,
Billy Bats came in the bar and he was talking shit, so we killed him and then moved his body upstate. you know?
yes, and I feel like it's so important that Scorsese is like a kid from Little Italy. He
Hmm.
is a kid from the streets, like essentially.
Hmm.
Um, and he like really knows these people,
Yeah.
and which is very different than like like a Tarantino making Reservoir Dogs or something like it's that's a movie like that feels very there's an aspect of like documentary to this and Scorsese's other sort of like Mean Streets is like he really knows what he's shooting and he knows the people that were there and he's it's almost like he's almost fighting the tension with him in himself like what appeals about this life to him
Yeah.
and
Like
that's
he
what
could have been one of those guys.
he could have been one of those guys and it feels like that's why it really rings true as opposed to some sort of like more voyeuristic like gangster movie is this feels like he really not that he lived this but
Hmm.
he knows these kinds of people in real life
Yeah.
which feels really like crucial to this.
Like they were his neighbors, they were
Right.
his, friends of friends. It's yeah. Which I guess is maybe part of the appeal for us that we were talking about before, where, not necessarily I don't think I was living next to any mobsters or anything like that, but you know, my neighbors, friends, people I went to school with, all that stuff, like there were Italian Americans. So like watching them like cook is
Yeah,
something that feels very familiar.
the food always looks so
Watching
good.
yeah, the food looks amazing in this movie. Even just like how they talk to each other and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's all more familiar than, again, not to keep comparing this to The Godfather, because The Godfather is an incredible, amazing
Mm-hmm.
movie in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't feel as lived in as something like this. That's more of like a grandiose sort of drama piece. Um,
Totally.
where this is
Totally.
like you said, kind of there's a documentary style to it.
Yeah, like in New Haven where I grew up is a very Italian American city and like there's like they have like a Little Italy area with all the really good pizza and yeah, the guys in the tracksuits, you know,
Yeah.
outside the pizza parlor, and it's like, yeah, it's like you, even if those guys aren't doing, and you know, I'm sure they're not, but it still felt, you know, you hear their conversations and the accent, the way they talk to each other. It's yeah, it feels like your environment is being represented, like with without crime, you know, like crime notwithstanding, just the way people
Yeah.
talk to each other, the way people dress, the way people carry themselves, like it feels very like real, and it feels very like, yeah, it's not like it's not super like overdone movie Hollywood. It feels very true to who you know, normal people are in these environments for sure.
Yeah. I think the other great thing with the cast, and I guess sort of with the lived in aspect of the movie,
Hmm.
like half of the cast of The Sopranos
Yes.
got their start in this. Like everyone, like essentially everyone in that show is in this movie.
Everyone, the whole thing. They just needed James Gandolfini. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it like literally, here you go, David Chase. Here's
Yeah.
your
The
entire
entire
cast.
cast.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like I had seen The Sopranos before I saw Goodfellas, so it's funny to think that like those people had already, they already meant something to me before
Hmm.
I'd seen Goodfellas, which is funny. But yeah, no, it's so true. It's like every Italian American character actor
Yeah.
was in that film.
You have Michael Imperioli as Spider.
So good. Poor
Wild
guy.
character. Poor
Yeah.
guy. You have what is it Tony Cicero who played Paulie Walnuts?
Yeah, yeah, he's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in there. I think my favorite is the guy who played Big Pussy in The
Mm-hmm.
Sopranos. He's one
Yes.
of the he's like a random background actor when
Yes.
Henry is going through all the names of the different guys in the crew in that bar, which to
So
me,
good.
like that might be the best scene in the whole movie. That
I think it
is
is.
just
Says everything
go,
two times.
yeah,
Get
Jimmy
the
two
papers. Get the
times.
papers. Yeah.
That yeah, like that's the funniest line of all time and the
Yeah.
funniest character, even though he only has that one line, or I
That
guess two
one line.
lines.
2 lines. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. No, it's so good, and yeah, it's just such a like perfectly casted film that, yeah, basically made The Sopranos viable. Like here you go. There's the whole cast.
so I feel like I can't I can't talk about this movie or really any Marty movie without talking about my goat, my personal hero, Thelma Schoonmaker or
Mm-hmm.
Schoonmaker. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but Queen Thelma is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely cooking in this. Do you have any specific thoughts about the editing in this movie, and just like how it all plays out?
Yeah, I just think that it's just like they're a perfect duo, and I think that I think it's Casino is like really exemplary of this when he's like talking about, not to get off topic, but just like he's
Hmm.
talking about the floor of the casino, and he's looking around, and then, you know, the eye in the sky, and there's like the camera's moving, and the edit and the
Hmm.
cuts are jumping, and I think like what makes Marty's style, not that I can talk, not I can't call him Marty, Mr. Scorsese style, uh, so viable, is like, I think she's a huge part of the operation, right? Like that his energy, the camera moves are only possible with an editor that can like really understand what he's trying to do.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to think of like a really I, I'm trying to think of like a really exemplary scene where the editing is just like incredible. I think the scene that you were just talking about with where he's introducing everyone and we're cutting around the copa,
Hmm.
or is it? It might just be a bar. I'm not sure if it's either way. And it's just so like energetic. The camera move, the cut, boom, next character, boom, and yeah, I think like they work so well, and like really probably most like famous editor ever. Like
Yeah.
And I think that those two together is just like a perfect, editor and director. And you don't think like the editor should be kind of like not felt almost,
Hmm.
but the way that those two work together is like you can really feel their collaboration when Marty pulls something off and it just works so well, and you can tell that they were like really they were like really on their game with that one like
They were
edit
just
or that one
fully
cut.
in the lab cooking. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't think she has worked really with anyone else
Anyone
besides
else?
him,
That's awesome.
and he's never used another editor.
Incredible. So
Like,
cool and so like so rare. Like,
yeah, they've got to be the most famous combo.
hmm
She has to be the most famous editor ever.
yeah, yeah,
And like you were saying, people you don't really notice editing unless it's really bad or if it's really good.
right.
And
Or if it's like something like Breathless, like the Godard
mhm,
movie where it's like the jump cuts are everywhere. It's like the first thing to do this ever, something like
yeah,
that. But yeah, no, you're like in a Hollywood movie, it's almost like they should be not seen. Like it's best if they're not felt.
yeah, the best you can do is not be felt. But
Right.
if you're Marty and Thelma, and I'll refer to them by first name because because we're so tight. If
Absolutely.
if you're the two of them, you can make the editing be like a part. It's like another character
Yeah.
within the movie.
Yeah.
It's so good. I think for me, I'm gonna go off on a little douchey tangent. I have this little
Go
soundboard
off.
that I use for the show, and I really need a sounder for when I veer off into douche territory. But the uh the early part of the movie when he's a kid and like talking about all that stuff, and there's all the freeze
hmm
frames. The movie's like a lot of the shots and edits are really like slow, deliberate, mostly like static shots. And then throughout the course of the movie, like the camera starts to move a little bit more, yada yada yada. And then you get to the famous last day as a wise guy scene where he's freaking out, he's seeing helicopters and all that shit. And the editing is just like so fast, like boom, 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 boom. Like there's barely like 2 seconds between, one cut to the next. And the way that the two of them are able to sort of like build up throughout the course of the movie, the way that the editing is just like reflecting Henry's psychological state and like state as a gangster is like pretty insane in my opinion.
It's
Um,
crazy. It's crazy. And one thing about Scorsese is that he was very addicted to cocaine for a very long time,
yeah,
and you can and like when one of his protagonists is like falling into a cocaine addiction or like ruining his life through cocaine addiction, is like he makes you feel it on like a visceral level.
mhm,
And I think like you're totally right that like the camera move the way the camera and editing is done in the first third of the movie to the second third of the movie to the last third of the movie is like very different. And you're right, that scene where he's driving around with the helicopter flying around, he's got his brother
yeah,
who like, and you're just like stressed out the whole freaking time. And then he's got to pick up the wife. And it's like the editing and the camera moves are just like, it really, yeah, like it's a visceral feeling of like just descent
yeah,
into like, and the whole time you're like, is the helicopter there? Is he just
yeah,
like, is he bugging out right now? And yeah, it's a pretty special sequence. And I do think that there is definitely something to that the cinematography and the editing definitely accelerates in that
yeah.
last third.
It's so wild that
Yeah.
he fully drops you into that headspace. It's like truly remarkable.
hmm
I think the other interesting thing that adds to the weird pacing of that scene in particular, and I think another interesting topic of conversation just for like the movie as a whole, is the amount of needle drops per
Oh my
square
god.
foot within the wise guy sequence is like absolutely bonkers, and like you said, like it makes you feel like you're descending into madness
Mm-hmm.
as well. Um, but that also allows me to ask the question of like, what do you make of the soundtrack as a whole, and just like the use of music?
I think Scorsese is probably the best user of a soundtrack director that there is. I think like Tarantino might, come Spike Lee's up there.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's cool when a film has like a really good score. That's cool.
Hmm.
But there's nothing like a Scorsese Rolling Stones needle drop.
Yeah.
I don't even like the Rolling Stones that much. I mean, they're a good band, but he's just so good at just making you be like, oh, that's fucking cool. Like just like a Stone song in the bar with a long tracking shot through the bar, and yeah, he's the best at that feeling of adding a song to a scene, which is not that easy of a thing to do. I mean, there's a reason why most people have a score,
Hmm.
and yeah, he really loves the Rolling Stones, man. But yeah, I think it's like one of the best soundtracks there is.
Yeah. It's, I feel like he may have been, if not the first, like among the first to sort of popularize
Yeah,
using just rock and roll songs
I think Mean
and popular
Streets.
music. Yeah.
Yeah,
Instead of having just a standard score,
yeah.
which, scores are great, like you said, but a lot of their purpose is to like manipulate you
Hmm.
emotionally in
Hmm.
terms of how to react to a scene. And I think it's cool that he doesn't just pick songs that like would do the same thing. He
Yeah.
picks songs that he just thinks sound cool, and
Hmm.
a lot of times they, it matches up. I think the best one in this movie, and maybe in any movie ever, is the Layla needle drop
Hmm.
when they're discovering all the bodies.
Yeah, yeah. Brutal. Um,
Absolutely insane.
yeah, he like it's. I think some of my like most like enduring images of film are
Hmm.
Martin Scorsese needle drops in movies. Like, and he's had to have used Jumpin' Jack Flash by the Rolling Stones like 4 or 5 times. And every
Give me
time
shelter
yeah,
like
it rocks
20
every
times.
time. I don't care.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he's so good at it. And like you said, yeah, he it's funny to think like cuz now he's like such a Scorsese is such like an elder statesman of
Hmm.
film, is that at one point he really was like, this little Lower East Side rebel, um,
Yeah.
like messing up the industry. And yeah, it's awesome, man. He's the best. So the music in this film rocks. The way he uses music in all of his films are just like it's just perfect. And like always finding a great like doo-wop song, that my grandparents listened to,
Yeah.
Bobby Vinton and stuff like that. Um, yeah, he's just like it's crazy to think that you'll hear a song and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's a Scorsese song. It's like he's a movie
Yeah.
director, like that's insane. But he has such like a stamp on things, and yeah, I mean, like, yeah, change the way people use music and film. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But
We
yeah,
wouldn't have, like, we just straight up wouldn't have Tarantino,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
if it weren't for what Marty did.
yeah.
Because, right, Tarantino's whole writing process is, I listen to music and try to build a scene around that, and
Hmm.
he wouldn't have like had
Right.
that at his fingertips if it weren't
He's,
for Scorsese, pioneering that two
exactly,
decades before.
exactly.
I think the Layla scene in particular, I think one of the reasons why it sticks out to me is one of if not the first time I watched this movie, it was at like someone's 12th birthday party. Again, just like the boys
Yeah.
watch, like, yo, let's watch Goodfellas. Uh,
Way too young, by the way.
way too young. I was so turned off by the violence, but one image that like stood out to me was when they find the body in the meat freezer, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like that insane crane shot that like comes down and then into the freezer. And I was like,
Yeah,
well, the rest of the movie's like kind of violent and really not for me, but that one shot of finding that guy was pretty cool.
pretty
Eh,
sick.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't even like know like what made it sick, but
Yeah. You felt something in that,
I felt
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've talked a lot about the movie itself, and
Hmm.
we've talked a little bit about Marty. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about where this movie sort of like sits within film history,
Hmm.
within the history of his career,
Hmm.
like 1990s cinema, all that.
I think it's interesting because like I don't I think he almost killed himself basically in the 70s, like just from like drugs. And then
Hmm.
he got clean and he made Raging Bull, and then it was like the best movie ever, like people had ever seen. And I think he kind of like had a pretty quiet 80s, and then I mean after that, and I think this Goodfellas is really kind of like the beginning of like his next chapter. And
Hmm.
I don't think it's, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's his best film. I don't think, but I do think it's almost like his most he's most like he is most present in this film. It feels like he is
Hmm.
almost like the main character, like the way that he shoots it and the way that it's edited and the soundtrack. It feels like this is his like baby almost. And I just think it's the perfect gangster movie. It literally is a genre in and of itself.
Hmm.
And I yeah, I think it's like anyone that wants to make movies, even if you don't care at all about like the mafia or can't relate to it at all, I think it's like a must see from the just perspective of like how to contain, I keep saying it, but like energy within a film,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it's just like it's just like bubbling over, it's boiling, and
Yeah.
there's no like dead space in it whatsoever. Yeah, no, I think it's just like it's a special movie.
Yeah. It's a special movie for me personally. I feel like
Yeah.
it's a special movie in general. Do you what do you make of, I don't know if you're a big like award season,
Hmm.
like if you care about the Oscars and think that they have any significance, but like what do you think about this movie sort of getting shut out um in that
Yeah.
regard?
Yeah, I think it getting shut out is kind of a reason not to care about the Oscars. I mean, I think they're like relatively interesting just in terms of like, oh, this is what's, people like the general, you know, public likes. But yeah, it's interesting that he got shut out for so long. I don't know what that's about. I think I mean, like I said, like it's funny to think about how Scorsese is sort of, now he's the elder statesman, but for a while,
Mhm.
the sort of like Academy didn't know what to do with him, which is
Yeah.
funny. Like I don't know what like perceptions were of him or his movies. I don't think they were thought of as like B movies or anything like that, but it is interesting. And now like Killers of the Flower Moon, is just like like a perfect movie. Like he just keeps churning out these like
Yeah.
just, you know 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Just all
And
timers.
yeah, just all to like masterpieces.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting that it's interesting that it took them a while, the Academy, to sort of like warm up to him. But yeah, did any actors from it get nominated? Did nothing?
I I
Pesci
know
got like
Pesci
a
I know Pesci has one. I don't know if it was
yeah.
for this
It's
or
probably from Raging Bull, I feel
for
like.
Raging Bull. It
Yeah,
must have been Raging Bull. I mean,
yeah,
he's amazing in that. Um,
yeah.
and like he's awesome in this because he's Joe Pesci, but like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
nothing that you haven't seen before.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. It does feel like De Niro and Pesci are kind of like super comfortable in their roles, which is cool. Is cool, but
Yeah.
but they're not, they're not reinventing the wheel. Um But
Yeah.
there's that scene where De Niro gets the call about when they whacked Pesci,
Yeah.
and he breaks the telephone booth and starts crying. It's like that's like the most emotion that happens in the movie, and it's
Hmm.
interesting that it's like De Niro that is like bringing like sort of a side character that is bringing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is. I do wonder if, like, at the time, I mean, I wasn't around when it came out, but I do wonder sort
Mhm.
of like what the general sort of intelligentsia reviews were like, what
Yeah.
if it was like sort of thought of as like a B movie or something like that kind of thing.
That's a good point. Because I could totally see, right, we're sort of approaching it from this guy has been around
Right.
in Martin Scorsese. He's been around our entire lives. He's been a really important name in cinema for as long as we've been film fans.
Right.
But there was probably a period of time where he was kind of an enigma. Like
Yeah.
people didn't know what to make of him or his movies.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure for 1990, this movie was overly violent and a little offensive to
Hmm.
the general public or to people who would be voting in the Academy, and like what is to be thought of as a significant important movie that like deserves awards,
Yeah.
um which
I'd
is
be
hard
interested to
for.
see what the nominees were for 1990 best film.
I think it lost to, oh my god, why am I blanking on the name? Oh, it lost to Dances with Wolves.
Got
which is like
it.
which is never that's like never been a movie that I've had any interest in
Nah,
watching. And
no.
I've seen Goodfellas about 50 times.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny how
So
how these work out.
yeah. But I mean, yeah, it would be really interesting to know sort of like what this movie, how people were thinking about this movie
Hmm.
at the time, if it was seen as high art or if it was seen
Right.
as, sort of like not smut, but
Yeah.
like stuff for those trashy folks over there.
Right. 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 For kids at 12-year-old birthday parties.
Yeah. But then also it's like interesting to think about like when was that change made? Like did people think about Casino the same way?
Yeah. No, it's
But then if you
interesting.
go backwards, Raging Bull is obviously thought of
Yeah.
as one of the masterpieces of, film history.
Yeah.
Uh Taxi Driver, I could see that have like maybe it went both ways in terms of um
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
what
It's
the
he's had such a fascinating career because it's just like he's been around for forever,
Mhm.
and he's had, I mean, there's certain things that are so true to everything he's made, but then he's made such different, like, Mean Streets to Killers of the Flower Moon are such different movies, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to think about how, like, what was made of Martin Scorsese, in 1975. Like, I think, yeah, I think Taxi Driver really freaked people out.
Yeah.
And that is a crazy movie.
Yeah.
That's an awesome movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It is in the canon, and so there will be an episode on that
Hell
at some
yeah.
point,
I'm
as
coming
is
back for
Raging
that one.
Bull. Hell yeah. um I don't know if any of the others are. I think for me, he he's like one of the most he might be the most important director of like my personal
Hmm.
just like cinema fandom. He's definitely my favorite living director. I hope we get like 3 more movies out of him. Killers absolutely like knocked
Rocked.
me onto my ass
Yeah, yeah,
in like every way possible. I think that's an all-time movie. I got to rewatch The Irishman,
yeah.
but yeah, wow. Uh, anything else on Goodfellas
I
before?
I think just when we're talking about like Goodfellas and Killers of the Flower Moon and Raging Bull to an extent, it's like he really excels in a sort of like, yeah, like that sort of like documentary style where it's like, this is a thing that happened. These are real characters. These, and he does like, I don't know what it is about his style or the way he tells stories that he just really excels in these like true stories, basically, like
Yeah.
telling, and he just like knocks it out of the park, and he tells them in different ways. It's not like he's doing it the same exact way. It's not like he's doing the same character over and over again, but like just that sort of documentary type style of telling basically a true story. It's just like there's something about it that just really brings the best out of him. It feels like.
Yeah, that's an important point to mention. That this movie is based on
Yeah.
real people who actually, walked this earth.
Yeah.
Uh, a funny, tidbit on that. One of my buddies from school, his dad was a NYC detective in
Mm-hmm.
like the
Oh
70s and
shit.
80s.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him once about Goodfellas and how it's like one of my favorite movies. And he just casually dropped. He was like, "Oh yeah, I knew all those guys. Jimmy the Gent, Henry Hill. Like
Holy
Jimmy was
shit.
the funniest guy you'll ever meet." I was like, "Bro, you were a detective. Like you're supposed to be the guy who was locking these guys up." And he was like, "Nah, Jimmy was just like the greatest guy, the funniest guy you'll ever meet." So, yeah, just to know that like these were these were
Yeah.
like actual people who, you know, obviously some of it is heightened for the drama of the movie, but like they did this
Yeah.
shit. Like
Yeah. They were really living that.
that heist was pulled off. Like
Yes.
people,
The Lufthansa heist has a Wikipedia page.
yeah. Ask your parents about it, or
Yeah,
we
exactly.
might have some Gen X listeners. Like you might
Right.
remember it, but if you're millennial, ask your parents about it. They will remember when that heist happened.
Exactly.
So insane. Yeah, man. There's one last random thing that I wanted to bring up that I wrote down. Actually, maybe two quick things. Going back to sort of like the cinematography,
Hmm.
there's that wild like vertigo shot towards the end when they're at the
Hmm.
diner and
Yeah.
Henry thinks that he's about to get whacked.
Yeah.
Um, and then I noticed this for the first time on this rewatch, but they do that and then they have the whole conversation, and then when things are sort of like reset at the end of the convo, he just does like a normal pullback. And again, I'm too dumb to like actually make the, the
No,
like
that works.
connection
Yeah. No.
of like what that means, but like those are
Yeah.
two things that definitely
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
But just
No, he does such a good job of like manipulating the viewer into, because like there's the stakes, even though like the stakes are high in terms of like the mobster might get whacked, or this mobster might get whacked, like the viewer doesn't necessarily care about that, because like
mhm,
they're all gangsters, like that's what happens in gangster movies. So like
yeah,
he almost has to, as a director, make us give a shit, like through, or make us feel something through like through his camera, like basically through the photography of the movie. And like we were talking about the editing and just like stuff like that, like I think that's kind of what he excels at, is like make it like sort of not hitting the viewer over the head with it, but just like really making sure that you feel something when you're watching that
hmm
scene. And yeah, like every time it's like, yeah, it's freaky. It's like, holy shit. Like
yeah,
no matter how many times I've seen the movie, it's like, yeah, that makes you feel
yeah. Why
uneasy
is
or
that
whatever.
car in
Yeah.
the background so fucking big?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
like what the hell is going on? Uh, and then the last thing, just also sort of towards the end of the movie, the fourth wall break
Hmm.
that they do like all the way at the end when Henry's in the courthouse
Hmm. Oh
is
yeah. Yeah.
it's such a ballsy move.
Yeah.
Like
Crazy.
does it work for you? Do you think it's like kind of out of
I
place?
mean, at that point, we're so deep in the film. I do feel like the last 15 minutes, which is crazy in such a long movie, it does feel a little rushed, from the
Hmm
helicopter scene when he's
hmm
driving around to like the court scene, then all of a sudden to the when he is in witness protection. That does
Yeah.
feel really compressed. Um, but I don't have a better I don't have a better solution than Martin Scorsese. So
Yeah.
like but yeah, I do like, I don't think it was off putting necessarily that the fourth wall break. I think it was like I was already I'm already so in with
Yeah.
that film already. Like I'm so in with with Scorsese already. Like I'm down with whatever. He's been
Yeah.
talking to us all, like, you know, Ray Liotta's been talking to us the whole movie anyways with the narration. So, but yeah, you're right. It is fucking ballsy when he just gets off the stand and starts talking to the camera. It is like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it works, and it's a good way of compressing that scene into a functional sort of like quick scene. Yeah,
Yeah. And you're just gonna do it with like 5 minutes left
yeah, literally, it's
you're a
crazy,
madman. You know,
crazy.
and still somehow pull it off.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's all that I had
yeah,
on Goodfellas. I probably have a lot more, but I don't want to bore you or our listeners with with just endless ramblings about this movie. Gus, do you have anything else on Goodfellas that you want to hit before?
just one more shout out for Lorraine Bracco's performance. She's just so fucking good in
Yeah.
that movie, and she really gives it. It feels like a little bit like she really gives it sort of a heart. You know, like
Hmm.
the soul of the movie almost feels like it's with her. Um, and yeah, she kind of carries a lot of the sort of emotional, like why we
Hmm.
give a shit, in a lot of it. So yeah, shout out to Lorraine Bracco, another Soprano, obviously Sopranos character.
Yeah.
You know, one of the goats, truly.
Legendary in
Um,
Goodfellas and The
yes,
Sopranos.
yes,
Absolutely amazing in both. Yeah, she's kind of like our entry point into this world because
yeah,
even all the stuff that you get with Henry at the beginning, it still feels like you're an outsider looking in. But then with her, it's like
yeah. That's almost why the
she's
Copa shot is so important. It's like
yeah,
not only her introduction, it's like our introduction too. So
yeah,
yeah,
great shout. She's
yeah,
she's absolutely wonderful in this.
she is.
Um, and thank you for shouting her out because I feel like she doesn't
Yeah.
get enough credit. It's all about the fellas,
Right,
the good
right.
fellas, the boys, but she's like really holding it down at the
Truly,
center as
truly.
the not the one lady, but sort of the most important female character
Yeah,
within the movie. Dope.
definitely.
Uh, this has been an absolutely great discussion about again one of my favorite movies. So Gus, thank you again
It's been a
for
pleasure,
joining me
man.
for this. This
Yeah,
has been an absolute blast. Goodfellas is my absolute jam. For any listeners that we have who actually read and care about the written version of the canon, I wrote the canon article for this movie. It was the first canon entry that I wrote for Screen Age Wasteland on the website. I think this is also the first episode that I've done about a movie that I actually wrote about. So if you if anyone wants to get a full understanding of like why this movie means so much to me, like there it is. So much
check
so
that out.
that I decided to write about it. So with all that, we can get into some recommendations, everyone's favorite portion of every episode, just in case we have any new listeners out there. For each movie that we introduce into the canon, we also recommend 3 things to check out if you like said movie. The rules for those 3 recommendations, at least one of them has to be another movie. The other 2, however, can be any and everything else. It could be more movies. It could be a book. It could be a TV show. It could be a band, an album, really anything. We like to get super creative. The connections can be as on the nose or as loose as possible. The only rules for any movies that we recommend, we just ask that none of them are already in the canon, and we try to stick to a 3 recommendation limit. So we've had some folks come in try to do some 2-for-1s, but we can't allow it. We're on a tight ship over here, so we got to stick to those rules. So Gus, with all that, we'll go. So you'll give your first, then I'll give my first, and we'll just kick it back and forth until we
Cool.
each have our 3. Give a brief sort of explanation as
Yeah.
to why you're recommending said piece. So
I would say one director that I really feel like when you watch his movies, you really feel the influence that he would have on Scorsese is Kurosawa. If you watch any
Oh, hell
Kurosawa
yeah.
movies, it's just like that's Scorsese. They are blood brothers of some type. So I would say High and Low by Kurosawa. It's like this awesome police procedural, like businessman's kid gets kidnapped, and the whole movie is them trying to like get the kid back. And he's like held for ransom, but it
Mhm.
is like just it's a Scorsese movie, but in like 1961 Japan, and it's so cool. And yeah, it just feels like you can really feel the influence that he had, and I think Scorsese's talked like constantly about how much he looked up to Kurosawa. So I think that would be my number one. It's just if you love Scorsese, definitely check out Kurosawa. They are somehow related, I swear.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have not seen High and Low,
Check it out.
but it's on my list. I love Kurosawa. We did a Yojimbo episode
Awesome.
in the first season of this show, so big fan of him. Also, aren't Spike Lee and Denzel, isn't their next collab going to be some sort of reinterpretation of
I'm
High
not
and Low?
sure. That sounds
I
awesome.
thought I thought I saw that news, and I hope I wasn't just making shit up because
I'm there. I'm there. If that's happening, I'm gonna love it. Yeah.
yeah, no Spike has had he stumbled the first time that he tried to do a remake of some Asian cinema. So
Yeah. Was it Old Boy? Yeah.
yeah,
That was weird.
I haven't seen it, but hopefully
Yeah.
his High and Low is great. But I got to check out the OG High and
Yeah.
Low. Sweet, that's an awesome pick. All right, cool. For my first recommendation, I'm gonna go with another crime movie where a murder that happens earlier on in the film comes back to be the ultimate downfall of some of our main characters. So in Goodfellas, you got Joe Pesci's character
Hmm.
and the boys beating Billy Bats to death, which then
Hmm.
obviously comes back around and bites Joe Pesci's Tommy in the ass, and he gets killed. You know, he gets murked when he's going to become a made man. So that's in Goodfellas. In the other movie that I'm recommending has a similar sort of structure. Doesn't totally match, but I'm recommending Menace to Society, one of
Mm.
the better films of that like early '90s indie hood cinema sort of trend that we were seeing. One of the better examples of like what can be done there. So great movie.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that is a fantastic movie. I'll say there's this for like a super stripped down version of like gangster movies. I will say this movie by this French director Jean Pierre Melville. He makes these like awesome gangster, like just like if you see a Melville movie, you know it's his. With the everyone's got the duster on and the top hat, and they're all
Yeah.
like smoking cigarettes, and they're super cold movies. Like there's no warmth in them at all, but they're like
Yeah.
super badass. This one movie, Le Samurai, it's just all time, just like stripped down, fucking cold gangster movie with this hitman, Le Samurai. Check that out. It's a super badass movie, and it has none of the charm of Scorsese, like none of like the warmth or anything, but it's badass. Yeah, I would highly recommend people check that out.
That movie is great.
It is so
We've
cool.
we've got a little trend going right now. I wonder if we'll keep it up of movies that can all be purchased uh,
Yeah.
on the Criterion Collection.
Criterion Collection. All right, fuck.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta do something on Netflix.
No, man, let's keep it up. Let's
All right.
keep going with the ultimate, like Twitter film bro
Yeah,
vibes of
exactly.
just only Criterion releases. uh okay, for my second recommendation, I'm going to go with a very obvious choice. I mentioned that Marty Mr. Scorsese is one of my favorite directors. Probably top two, my favorite living director, very influential in just like my understanding of cinema as a whole. So I have to recommend another one of his films. there are a lot of movies that are sort of spiritual successors to Goodfellas. You know, the list sort of goes on, and we could really pick from any of his other movies over the last 30 or so years to sort of fit that vibe. But the one that I want to go with, we talked about it a little bit before. I'm going to go with The Irishman.
Yeah.
I just think that is like, that's sort of like a flip on this movie where it doesn't show you any of the temptation of the life of crime. It just shows the sort of fallout from
Mm-hmm.
all of that. So, you know, like we were saying at the beginning, Goodfellas, it could be dinged for, you know, not being super obvious in its message that like these guys aren't good. They're not
Yeah.
good dudes. You shouldn't look up to them or idolize them at all. And The Irishman just like takes out any of that confusion. Just like,
Yeah.
nope, this is really sad and depressing, and we should like feel bad for these people.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100%. It's like so like monotonous in
Yeah.
a like in a good way somehow, but because only Martin Scorsese can do that. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
brutal. Like at the end there when he's just like old. Yeah.
That
But yeah,
last
no.
shot
Yeah, brutal.
is insane.
Yeah. Such a good film.
Also available on the Criterion Collection.
Also available on the Criterion Collection. You know, I think I'm gonna go with another. I didn't. This wasn't on my list, but I'm going to go with. If you haven't seen Mean Streets, and you are into Goodfellas and all of like Scorsese's later stuff, like I think it's so fun to watch. It's not his first film, but like it's his first sort of like his sort of first gangster film, and I think it's so fun to watch really great directors early in their career and feel that and see them sort of figuring it out and see them sort of like finding themselves. So if you haven't seen Mean Streets and you are into Scorsese and into any of this kind of stuff, do that ASAP because that movie rocks. And Harvey Keitel is incredible. Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro in that movie are fucking incredible.
Yeah, that movie is great. I remember I saw that movie for the first time when I was like way too young. I saw it when I was like 16.
Yeah.
Not young and like it was too much violence or anything. I just couldn't fully like grasp what he was going for, but that's a great shout in terms of just like understanding, you know, sort of like things that this director has been thinking about since early on in his career.
Yeah.
Also available on the Amazing. All right.
We need some sort of like, you know, I don't know, some swag from them or 15% off, something.
Yeah. Just we always have the 50% off on all Blu-rays at all times. All right. I'm gonna, as much as I do want to recommend something else that is available for purchase on the Criterion Collection, I'm gonna switch it up and go with something completely opposite, just like such a goofy recommendation. But there's an episode of the TV show Community that is essentially like a ripoff of Goodfellas, and it involves one of the characters like being a server in like the college dining hall or something, and just like getting all of his buddies chicken fingers. I don't know if you ever watched the show, but
no, I've never seen it.
It's like the whole episode is just a ripoff of Goodfellas, which is hilarious. Like it even starts out like, as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a dining hall server or something stupid like that. And it has like the voiceover. There's a scene where he like goes through everyone's names, like the scene in the bar with Jimmy Two Times. So dumb, but just like a great, you know, nod to one of the best movies of all time.
Yes.
So yeah, the name of the episode is Contemporary American Poultry.
Let's go.
Season 1, episode 21 of Community.
Wow, 21 episode season. That's
a throwback.
Yeah,
that's a throwback.
Yeah, for real.
Before we say our final goodbyes, let's run through the recommendations one last time. Boom, 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 just so folks can write them down in case they didn't hear it the first time around.
All right, so I had High and Low, I had Le Samurai by Jean-Pierre Melville. I should say High and Low is by Kurosawa. Le Samurai by Jean-Pierre Melville, and then Mean Streets by Martin Scorsese.
Sweet. I've got Menace to Society by forgetting the directors' names, but it's a brother duo. Shout out to them though. I've got The Irishman, also by Scorsese, and I've got season 1, episode 21 of Community, the sitcom, contemporary American poultry.
Let's go.
Gus, thank you
Raph, it's
again.
been a pleasure, man.
This has been such a blast.
Yes.
I absolutely adore this movie. I had a great time talking about it with you. Thank you for bringing the heat tonight. This was
appreciate it.
This
man.
was a ton of fun. So you've got the documentary series coming out early 2025.
25, yeah, crazy to think about, but yeah, next spring, sometime next spring.
Amazing. In the meantime, if people want to get more movie opinions, anything like that, are you on the Letterboxd and
I'm on Letterboxd. Any socials to plug? I forget my Letterboxd handle, but I can follow up with you on that. And I am on Twitter at Lil Gustafson, GUSTAFSON. There might be another F in there, but you'll find me. I'm friends with Raph on Twitter, so you can find me. And I'm always talking shit about movies on Twitter.
Amazing. We love talking shit about movies on Twitter. We love talking shit about movies on Letterboxd. We love talking shit about movies on the Canon.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for joining. I hope we can get you on for another episode. Man. In the future. I think you said Taxi Driver. You're
Let's
there.
Let's do it.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, listeners. Thank you as always for joining us. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned here on the Canon. You can also check out a lot of write-ups, reviews, lists, all that stuff on the website proper, screenagewasteland.com. We're building out our YouTube page. You can find old episodes of the Canon up there. It might be so far into the future that you're listening to this episode on YouTube, but really a lot of exciting stuff. Come hang out with us. We will be back next week to talk about The Truman Show, another great movie, great Jim Carrey performance. So very much so looking forward to that. We hope to see you then. And until then, we'll catch you in the wasteland.